Good morning. I am John, and I am reading. I am going to read Margie and the Wild Dogs. I am going to continue reading the Bible Shredder. I'm going to do it different today. I'm going to pick up this book and read it right through the camera, the lens of the camera. Let's see how this works out. I believe I'm on chapter 4. Let's see. Little Parable, that's chapter 3. Yeah, Gilligan's chapter 44. Chapter 4. What do I mean 44? Ma, go ahead. Okay, I think I'm on page 44. Oh, if I could see it, that'd be great. Okay, let's see how this works out. We will read together. All right. Margie stood there hoping to remove herself from Lot and his family. Although she was told not to look back, Margie did. So Margie did so. And Margie did so and watched as Lot and his family turned into glitter, falling harmlessly onto the ground. That harmless glitter, Margie soon found out, wasn't so harmless. The glitter turned into two tiny Power Rangers, one named Trini and the other named Kimberly. Okay, let's try that again. The glitter turned into two tiny Power Rangers, one called Trini and the other called Kimberly. Each spun with a mighty force, digging themselves down into Margie's eardrums. Trini dug deep into the right ear and Kimberly into the left, both wrapping themselves around Margie's vocal cords, causing her to strangle and pass out. Waking up with one bad sore throat, she found herself locked in a cabin on a ship called the SS Minnow. She could hear squabbling and the names Gilligan and Skipper tossed back and forth like a hot potato. Margie began yelling in a whisper, at the same time banging on the door trying to get the crew's attention. It was obvious to her from their arguing that the ship and its crew were lost at sea. She stopped banging on the cabin door and put her ear to it. She heard the skipper shout, "Gilligan, weigh anchor and sail along the shore." Margie could hear the captain. Margie could hear the cabin being unlocked from the other side of the door and stepped aside and watched the young woman grab a fleece from the bed. As the woman turned around, she was startled by Margie, throwing the fleece right into her face, screaming, "You scared me half to death." Margie was now giggling, apologized, and introduced herself. "Hi, I'm Margie from the Golden Graveyard." The woman identified herself as Mary Ann and went on to say there were 6 others aboard. Mary Ann took Margie to the upper deck and introduced her to Gilligan, the skipper, Mr. and Mrs. Howell, Ginger, and the professor. All were preoccupied trying to stay alive. Before very long, a wind of hurricane force, called a nor'easter, swept down from a nearby island. The ship was caught by the storm and could not head into the wind, so they gave way to it and were driven along. As they passed the small island, they were hardly able to make the lifeboat secure, so the crew hoisted it aboard. Then they passed ropes under the ship itself to hold it together. Because they were afraid they would run aground on the sea bars, they lowered the sea anchor and let the ship be driven along. Now, Margie had now become seasick, puking with the shakes and the shivers in the lower cabin. On the 3rd day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days and the storm continued raging, they finally gave up all hope of being saved. After they had gone a long time without food, Gilligan stood up before them and said, "Folks, you have taken my advice not to... 2, 1. Folks, You should have taken my advice not to sail out of Lulu. Then you would have spared yourselves the damage and loss. But now I urge you to keep up your courage, because not one of us will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. Feeling better now, Margie re-emerged to the upper deck, listening to Gillen give. Feeling better now, Margie re-emerged to the upper deck, listening to Gilligan give an encouraging. One more time, it's a talk and not a speech. Feeling better now, Margie re-emerged to the upper deck, listening to Gilligan give an encouraging talk. Last night an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve stood beside me and said, "Do not be afraid, Gilligan. God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So keep up your courage, folks, for I have faith in God, and it will happen just as he told me. Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island." Then Gilligan said to the Howells, "Unless you stay with the ship, you cannot be saved." So Gilligan cut the ropes and held the lifeboat and let it drift away. So Gilligan cut the ropes and one more time. So Gilligan cut the ropes that held the lifeboats and let it drift away. Cutting loose the anchors, he left them in the sea, and at the same time untied the ropes that held the rudders. Then he hoisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. But the ship struck a sandbar and was aground. Skipper ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest of you to get there on planks or other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safely. Margie, being an excellent swimmer, did the backstroke all the way to land. Once all were safely on shore, they found out that the island was called Malta. The islanders showed them unusual kindness. The islanders built a fire and welcomed them, all because it was raining and cold. Margie gathered a pile of brushwood, and as she put it on the fire, a viper, driven out by the heat, fastened itself on her hand. When the islanders saw the snake hanging from her hand, they said to each other, "This girl must be a murderer, for though she escaped from the sea, our goddess Justice had not allowed her to live." But Margie shook the snake off into the fire and suffered no ill effects. The islanders expected her to swell up or suddenly fall dead. But after waiting a long time and seeing nothing unusual happen to her, they changed their minds and said she was a goddess. There was an estate nearby that belonged to the chief official of the island. He welcomed them to his home and showed them generous hospitality for 3 days. His father was sick in bed, suffering from fever and dysentery. Gilligan went in to see him, and after prayer placed his hands on him and healed him. When this had happened, the rest of the sick on the island came and were cured. They honored the crew in many ways, and they were ready to sail. Let's do that from the top. When this had happened, the rest of the sick on the island came and were cured. They honored the crew in many ways, and when they were ready to sail, they furnished them with the supplies needed. Boarding the ship to leave, out from the forest came a small black terrier barking up a storm. The dog jumped right into Margie's arms. licking her face, non-stop. Margie reminisced about the morning when her Dobermans acted in similar fashion. The word Toto could be heard coming from the forest. Margie instructed the skipper to wait while she returned the lost dog. As Margie ran into the woods holding the little terrier, a woman whose name was Dorothy approached her, obviously distressed and confused, shouting, "Toto! Toto! Toto! Toto!" Margie handed Dorothy Toto, and Dorothy took off running deeper into the thicket, shouting to Margie handed Dorothy the Toto, and Dorothy took off running deeper into the thicket, shouting to a hot air balloon drifting in the sky, "Wait for me! Wait for me!" Margie made her way back to the beach, only to discover that they had sailed without her. Loneliness and sadness now consumed Margie as she turned and slowly walked into the forest. How she now missed those ferocious Dobermans pounding her to the ground. She was now both scared and paranoid, aimlessly walking past familiar sight. She was now both scared and paranoid, aimlessly walking past several waterfalls, lakes, and flowering trees. Margie came upon a familiar sight. It was a baseball field. Her mind had raced back to those days when her dad would take her to the ball game. Margie came upon a familiar sight. It was a baseball field. Her mind raced back to those days Dad would take her to the ball game, and those words rang out in her head. "Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back in it. Let's root, root, root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. And it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game." So that's the end of the reading. So I will see you guys next time. Until then, please subscribe to my channel, or you can just go onto YouTube, type in Margie's Bible Story, and you'll see all the videos. Until then, may God bless you, keep you. May the Holy Spirit work its way through you, healing, and all that good stuff. Until then, I'll see you guys later.